Hello everybody, welcome back to another deck profile for the channel. I'm your host, The Honest Woobat! Last time I showed everyone my Masked Hero deck profile. If you haven't seen that, be sure to check it out. Pretty sure I'll put a link in the description below. I'll think about it. If not, it'll be on my deck profile playlist on the channel. For today's video, on the other hand, Oreo? No. No. So as you can see, we have a Judgment Dragon on top. And that's because today's deck profile will be over the Lightsworn deck. Now, as much as I would want to say, oh yeah, I have a lot of synchro monsters, which would really help out this deck a lot. I'll be sure to give that update when I get those cards. But for now, this is a no extra deck Lightsworn Judgment Dragon spam deck. With that, and I got these cards about as cheap as I possibly could, so it's not, the cards in here aren't all that expensive. I haven't looked it up on TCG Player, but I'd wager this deck is probably around, I don't know, 20 bucks. If you're gonna go for individual price, I don't know, personally I'd probably sell this for like, I don't know, 10 or 15. But with all that being said, let's look at the deck. So starting off with our ace in the hole, we have 3 copies of Judgment Dragon. He's by far your win condition for this deck. Not yet. So, basically what Judgment Dragon does is that if you have 4 or more Lightsworns with different names in your graveyard, you can automatically special summon them from your hand. Once you've done that, you can pay 1,000 life points, and you can pretty much nuke the field. Every other card except for it is destroyed. And it's a 3k beater. Let's see what else. And at the end of your turn, you gotta send the top 4 cards of your deck to your graveyard. Basically, what the Lightsworns do is at the end of each turn, just send your deck to the grave. Pretty much, you're just milling cards from the top of your deck. I run 3 for consistency's sake, and personally, I feel like you should always run 3 Judgment Dragon. Maybe 2 if you're running like a Chaos build, but personally, I feel like you should always have 3 Judgment Dragons in a Lightsworn deck. Next up, for the next best card of the deck, we have 3 copies of Raiden, the Hand of the Lightsworn. I recently got him at the last locals I went to, so hey, look at that. I finally got the card that helps the deck run a lot faster. Oh, and for the record, this is a 40-card deck. Just so that way things are kept consistent. Sorry about that, I had to throw the toy for Oreo, the dog. What Raiden does is that during your main phase, you can send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard, and if any of them have Lightsworn as their name, he gains 200 attack for each one, for every single Lightsworn that was sent to the grave due to his effect. And at the end of your turn, you send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard, just mandatory. He's a level 4 warrior tuner. So when I do manage to get those level 7 or level 8 synchro monsters, that will be very helpful, like say Black Rose Dragon, Michael the Arc Lightsworn, or Stardust Dragon, just to name a few. And of course, you can't talk about Raiden without talking about his best friend. 3 copies of Lumia, the Lightsworn Summoner. What she does is that when you summon her, once per turn, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard, and you can special summon 1 level 4 lower Lightsworn from your graveyard. And at the end of each turn, you send 3 cards to the graveyard. As you can see here, level 3, level 4, get that level 7 synchro out on the board. Get your Stardust Dragon. What can do. Next up, for our next 3 we have 3 copies of Wolf Lightsworn Beast. He is by far one of your heaviest normal monster beaters, aside from third only the Judgment Dragon, at least in my build. He got 2,100 attack points. His effect is that he can't be normal summoned or set. He can only be special summoned if he's sent from the deck to the graveyard. So if you use Foolish Burial or any of the other Lightsworn effects he sends to the graveyard, just free 2,100 beater. Level 4, so it's pretty good. Next up, I have 2 copies of Lila. Lila, I've seen a lot of people only run. I personally run 2 just so I can see her more often. And she's 1,700, so it deters a couple cards. Basically, her effect is that if there's a spell or trap on your opponent's side of the field, you can just switch her to defense mode. That card is destroyed. In exchange, you can't switch her turn. You can't switch her position until like the end of your next turn. And she sends the top 3 cards to your deck to your graveyard. She's got 1700 attack, so it's alright. Next up, we have 2 copies of Raikou, the Lightsworn Hunter. I don't really see a lot of people run Raikou. Then again, personally, I would probably... No, I'd keep Raikou in here. I probably would switch out the next 2 cards for Felice, who I do not have yet. This deck is still in still in production. I'm still making this deck. It's being changed around. This is just the first update of my Lightsworn deck. So what Raikou does is that when it's set and you flip it face up, it automatically destroys 1 card in the field, and then it sends 3 cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard. So it's pretty good for getting surprise pop on maybe a Link monster or whatever. Next up, we have 1 copy of Garoth, the Lightsworn Warrior. He's got 1850, so he's a pretty good beater. His effect basically is that for every card sent to the graveyard by Lightsworn's effect, you can send that same number of cards to the graveyard. Oh no, my bad. Send the top 2 cards to your deck to the graveyard. I don't know why I read that wrong. Weird. Send the top 2 cards to your deck to the graveyard, and then draw a card for every Lightsworn that was sent. So it's pretty good for keeping the chain going. And the last Lightsworn in the deck, we have 1 copy of Minerva. I always feel like you should always run at least 1 copy of her. You won't really get her normal summon effect. You're mostly going to be using her for her sent to the graveyard effect, which lets you mill another card. Because the main focus of this deck is to mill. Get as many cards in the graveyard as possible so you can bring Judgment Dragon out and go for game. She's also a tuner, so if need be, and you have, say, Wolf, you could summon her level 7 Synchro. You know, if you're able to. That's it for our Lightsworn monsters. Now for some support cards. These next 4 support cards came straight out of the Layer of Darkness structure deck. And I've double checked them, and when I've play tested with them, they've run pretty good. We've got 2 copies of Relink Kuriboh. What I like about Relink Kuriboh is that when it's sent to the graveyard, it provides extra protection for our Lightsworn monsters or Judgment Dragon. Because his effect is that if he's in the graveyard and your monster's about to be destroyed by battle, you can just banish it instead and your monster stays on the field. So that's pretty good. Not to mention he's a dark target. Next 2 cards are Absolute King Backjack. What I like about Absolute King Backjack is that his effects really work well in a Lightsworn deck. Because if you banish him, you get to just get a free mill off because you only have... I only have a grand total of 4 trap cards in this deck, and they're all normal. So either way, you're getting a free normal trap, or you could just get a free mill. So that works. And if he sends to the graveyard, I can look at the top 3 cards, and say if I got, let's see now, say if I got Raiden on the board, and it's the end of the turn. He was milled previously due to his effect. I can just switch the cards around to send the cards that I want in the graveyard there. So, it's pretty helpful. And on top of that, he's another dark target. For our support card, we have 1 copy of Honest. I would run 2 more. I would run 3. But for right now, 1's good. Until I can get 2 more. Basically, what Honest does is that when you have a light monster that's about to do battle, you can just discard Honest from your hand, and your light monster gains the same amount of attack points as the monster is battling. So say if you have Raikou, and Raikou's about to do battle with, I don't know, Blue Eyes White Dragon. You discard Honest, Raikou will gain 3,000 attack points. So it can just get over the monster that's threatening it. Alright, next up. These 2 are only at 1, because I only have 1 copy of each. But if I could, I'd run the full play set of each. We've got 1 White Dragon Wyver Buster, and 1 Black Dragon Colossus Sprint. They go hand in hand with each other. What they each do is they banish the opposite element of themselves, and they can be special summoned. And when they're sent from the field to the graveyard, you can look up the other copy of each other. Pretty helpful if you want to get like a decent offense or decent defense. And well, I mean, okay, there is one extra deck card. Now that I'm thinking about it, I might add it. Like I'm adding it like as I'm speaking, but no, I'm not gonna add it. I said no extra deck. There will be no extra deck. But if need be, once we get the Synchro monsters and the other more copies of these cards, they will be up to 3 of each. And last but not least, we have one Dark Flare Dragon. Dark Flare Dragon's in here as basically like a pseudo BLS or Chaos Sorcerer. Just so I can have a way to make use of the dark monsters I have in the deck. Just so that way I can just utilize this effect and maybe even send some Judgment Dragons to the graveyard for a card you're going to see later on, which is very helpful for if they're all in the grave. That's it for our monsters. Here we go on to our spells. We have 3 copies of Solar Recharge. What Solar Recharge does is it lets us discard a Lightsworn monster. We get to draw 2 cards and then send 2 cards to the graveyard. Very good. This is our draw power. So glad this is still at 3. It hasn't been hit at all. Along with our Rhoda of the deck, 3 copies of Charge of the Light Brigade. Thankfully, they brought this back to 3, so we essentially get a free Lightsworn for everything, for every 12 cards sent. Basically, what each of these cards do is you send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard, and then you get to look out. You get to add a level 4 or lower Lightsworn to your hand. Pretty decent. All right. Next up for our 1-ups, we have 1 Mystical Space Typhoon, just so we can get rid of some back row, anything that's needed there. I only run 1, just so that way, because more likely than not, it's probably going to get milled, so why not? We have 1 copy of Dark Hole, in case our Judgment Dragon gets negated, so we can just clear our board. I don't have Raigeki, but I'd still run Dark Hole over Raigeki. We have 1 copy of Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial is good for getting that last Lightsworn in there in case you need it for Judgment Dragon, or if you don't have any monsters in the field, you can just send Wolf to the graveyard just to get a free beater. And our last spell is Soul Charge. Just in that last ditch effort in case you need to get some serious mills in there, or if you're just setting up, just that way you have a defense against whatever onslaught your opponent would be having. All right, and the last 4 cards of the deck will be traps. So we have 3 copies of Beckoning Light. I love this trap card. I don't know why people don't play it more often. Maybe because it's a bit slow, because it's a trap. If it was a spell card, it'd be a lot better. Basically what Beckoning Light does is you send your entire hand to the graveyard, and for every card you send, you get to add 1 light monster from your deck, from your graveyard to your hand. This is where I mentioned before about Judgment Dragon and any light monster just gets immediately added back to your hand. And it's awesome. So it's very helpful in case, like, oh no, all my Judgment Dragons are in the graveyard. What do I do? Well, I'll just activate Beckoning Light, get them all back. And it's really good. It's really good. I've always run it just like as a safety net, just so you can recycle some cards. All right, and the last card we run in the deck is 1 Twilight Cloth. Now, Twilight Cloth is a pretty okay trap card. It's good for, like, if you have pretty much your entire deck in the graveyard and you need to get that last swing over in your opponent, you activate Twilight Cloth on your Judgment Dragon. Your Judgment Dragon can get shot up to... 1 second, let me just count how many Lightsworn monsters are in the deck. Alright, did the recount. If you use this card, you have pretty much every card in your entire deck just in the grave. You can get an additional 3,000 attack points on any monster that's out on your Judgment Dragon. So bring it up to 6,000, so it can get over pretty much anything. And its last effect isn't too bad either. If it's sent from the deck to the graveyard, which more often than not it's going to be, then our Lightsworn monsters can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. So that's pretty good. Alrighty then, that's gonna be it for the deck profile. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and leave us any suggestions for what cards you can add in, like Performance, Hand Trick, Clown, or anything like that. Alright, that's it for today. See you guys next time.